Let's introduce our next guest, Dr. Ori Goldberg, joining us, an Israeli political commentator. Dr. Goldberg, thank you for being with us. We heard from Iris Malka about the situation regarding the Flag Day and obviously about the situation regarding the northern border. Can I put my first question to you, sir, regarding Benjamin Netanyahu? Because in many ways, Israel's Prime Minister seems to be caught in the horns of a dilemma right now. He has the peace deal, as proposed by Joe Biden last weekend, which is there, which, if he accepts it or if he rejects it, he seems he's going to be on a loser either way, politically for himself.
Well, let me try and redraw the dilemma in domestic political terms. Netanyahu now has to decide where he has a better chance of surviving the ordeal he's been undergoing for the last several years. His trial, the protests against him. He has two options here. One is his religious right power base. They are ideologically quite staunch. They are the ones who want to continue the war in Gaza until the complete eradication of Hamas. They're the ones who are calling for a war in Lebanon. They're the ones who are leading this march on Jerusalem Day, which is all provocation, all bullying, all violence. Netanyahu can choose them. They've been loyal, but they have their differences with him, and they don't trust him so much. He doesn't trust them so much. There's a real relationship there, but it's not based on ideological kinship. It's based on interests. They knew that Netanyahu would give them whatever they wanted in return for their political support. But Netanyahu can also choose to dismiss them. Netanyahu can also choose to sign the hostage deal. And if he signs the hostage deal, then he would be touching on a discrete truth of Israeli politics, which is that even the Israelis who are out in the streets protesting against him, they don't disagree with his policies. I'm using the double negative intentionally because it's all quite discreet and nobody really says this outright. They support his war. I'll go as far as saying that they support the genocide. And they have no reason to vote for pale epigons of Netanyahu like Benny Gantz or anybody else. If they can get a prime minister who will have the courage to say, okay, I've fought this war for as long as I could, now it's time to sign the hostage deal. He might actually stand a better chance in elections or even in some negotiated plea bargain for his trial before elections if he chooses to rely on the support of the broad, quiet Israeli center and not on the support of a settler vanguard. They make a lot of noise, a lot of provocation, but they are not a national movement. That's his dilemma.
Let me come back to you in a second. I'll bring Iris back in, our correspondent in Jerusalem. Iris Malka, I hope you heard what Dr. Goldberg was saying there. I'm keen to ask you, as you went to the march today, what was the sense you got from the people there, for or against Netanyahu?
You know, they are focused on Jerusalem. They are focused on the what they call the Temple Mount, what Palestinians call the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We heard from Ben Gvir, one of their leaders, the controversial now minister, and he said, we have to show Hamas that we're taking back Jerusalem. So their focus is on Jerusalem rather than on Netanyahu. If they have to choose between Netanyahu and a centrist leader, or what they would call a leftist leader whom they despise, they would choose Netanyahu. The question is, can Netanyahu, as our guest was saying, can Netanyahu put up with them? Will it be in his long-term interests to do that? Will it be in his short-term interests to do that? Because things are becoming much more stressful here, both in Gaza and especially on the northern border.
Iris, thank you. You set up my next question very nicely to Dr. Goldberg, who we're bringing back in now. Dr. Ori Goldberg, Israeli political commentator. Dr. Goldberg, you were saying about Netanyahu perhaps needing to come back to the centre. You were saying that was a possibility that he could choose to do if he so wanted to create a different kind of governance if possible. Is that likely to happen? Isn't he more or less in hock to the far right in his coalition?
No, he isn't. They've had a very tumultuous relationship. He is not a right-wing ideologue. He has disappointed them before, and they have left his governments before. This has all already happened. And as you say, things are heading towards the precipice. He has to decide where he wants to jump. It's true that there is a lot of dislike for Netanyahu in Israel generally. But then again, there is no real viable alternative so far. I think your correspondent was absolutely correct when she said that these right-wing hawks they think of Netanyahu as a means to an end. They are not personally devoted to him. By the way, it is interesting to note that the ultra-Orthodox parties, their constituencies are right-wing, but they are very much personally devoted to Netanyahu. They have already announced that they will support a hostage deal. Again, there are domestic political considerations that have driven them to do so, but really it's becoming a situation where one has to decide between ideology, hard fast, and broader domestic political considerations. Netanyahu is a very astute politician. He knows Israel very well. He represents a very powerful Israeli constituency. I think he's had enough of the religious right, and I think there's a very good chance he's going to flip on them.
Let me bring Iris back in for a moment, Dr. Goldberg. Thank you very much indeed. Please stay with us. Iris, you're reacting there. Tell us what's on your mind.
I'm interested. I haven't heard it put quite like that. I was hearing of deals. You know, his problem isn't whether he'll put up with the left or the centre parties. It's whether they'll put up with him, because they've all vowed not to sit with him. That's why he has this coalition. So I have heard people suggesting that a deal may be cooked up even out of Washington, which would say to the opposition leader, give Netanyahu a year in office and then he will bring you into power. He will remove the right-wing parties. He'll have a year more, and that will be to the benefit of everyone. And there will then be a ceasefire deal and a hostage exchange, hopefully. But I haven't ever heard it put, as Dr. Goldberg is putting it, that actually Netanyahu is sick of the right, his right-wing flank. So I'm very interested to hear that. You do feel something in the air, and I don't know if it's actually what's happening in northern Israel and the fact that Israel doesn't want to fight on two fronts. So there's a military imperative to solve or to at least halt the war in Gaza for some time, maybe for a very long time. Or I don't know if it's that, but you do feel something in the air here, that's for sure.
Thank you, Iris. I think it was Yoav Gallant who spoke about the conflict being on 7 fronts. He listed all the countries, including Samaria and Judea, i.e. the West Bank. So in a sense, is this what Netanyahu said today about being ready to respond in a very strong way in the north, Dr. Goldberg? Is this something that is inevitable? Is this inevitable that Israel is going to really push into southern Lebanon?
No, I don't think it's inevitable at all. I think there is a major push that's coming from the military, from the IDF, which again is understandable when you think about the politics. The IDF is desperate for a win. The IDF has failed abysmally in Gaza. It has not accomplished its goals. Hamas has not been eradicated. The hostages have not been returned. All the IDF can do now is say, we told you this would take a long time, but the longer it takes, the more this begins to seem like perhaps the biggest military defeat Israel has ever experienced. And the IDF is so desperate now that Lebanon seems like a reprieve. That would be a real war. We could actually maneuver. We wouldn't be stuck in the alleys and byways of crowded cities. Let us show our mettle there. We will restore security. The problem is nobody's buying it after 8 months. And also there's this other thing you need to remember. Hezbollah has said, if the fire in Gaza stops, we will cease firing on our side. If that happens, the IDF, as eager as it might be to press on into Lebanon, the IDF would have absolutely no cause and no mandate to do that. Hezbollah has so far been very smart strategically, very smart in using its power and applying it. There's no reason to assume that at this stage, when Israel's defeat could finally become clear even to Israelis, Hezbollah will jump the gun.
Dr. Ori Goldberg, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. And Iris Makler, as always, it's a pleasure having you in the studio, even by Skype as we're doing it, to give us your insight as well. We really appreciate it. Thank you for shedding light on the story on which we need calm analysis, and you've both provided it for us very greatly. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Ori Goldberg and our correspondent Iris Makler in Jerusalem.